Oh, there's Model Virginia, and there's Marine Fighter Pilot Don. But my high school is just me, Virginia, and two poodles. And there's Grandpa Vernon, Colonel Don, and Teenage Don. Now, I took no art classes in grade school, but I got a book out of the library, How to Draw. And I wanted to learn to draw on the streets of New York. I got a cold water apartment with tub and kitchen and toilet and closet. And I walked the streets of New York learning how to draw. You can take subway for 10 cents. Metropolitan Museum, where you go study for free, is open every day. So I spent a month or two in New York City. But I got robbed and I decided to hitchhike out to San Francisco. So I took the Great Northern Route past Chicago through Reno, Nevada. I got in San Francisco and I stayed a week, 10 days. My drawing improved. I got pretty good. I got to see Jimi Hendrix at the old Fillmore. But I had to get back to South Florida. I had to get back pretty quickly because there was a war on. This was the 60s, 1968. And I didn't want to get drafted. Surprise! I did get drafted. I wound up in artillery school and I got the booby prize. I wound up in Vietnam, outside Bien Hoa Air Base. But I didn't have to kill anybody. I didn't shoot anybody with a gun. I did shoot people with a camera. I picked up my SRT 101 with a 58 1.4 lens at the PX. And I learned photography at the hobby shop while working with these guys, Tennessee and two Papasons. Very nice guys, very nice people. Subject matter was excellent. You couldn't get better. So I get out of there, and I wind up getting picked up by my pal at the airport, Jack. We get a bag of cold beer, and it's just like old times. Friends from Biscayne and Berry College. And when the crowd goes down to the Keys, Theo and Don hook up. Theo was the best experience of my young life. She was a pretty girl who didn't know or care how to be pretty. An elementary school teacher who wanted to be a mother. I lived with some of the Biscayne boys, the graduates, in this big house at Mary Street, Coconut Grove. I go to North Dade Community College. This is where I learned how to draw in a studio setting. It was a great art environment with Bob Thiele, Mike Klesmer, Mr. Hashem, photography teacher. And I had great subjects to photograph at the house. People walked around half naked there, and this was the first time I actually took a serious, can I take your picture type photograph? This is Jan. So this is Frank Cascio at the big white house. James Triarci came in later. Theo was, like I said, wanted to have a family. I wanted to have adventures. So those two things couldn't match up. This was another one of the roommates, Dwayne Treeman. He had a house next door, but he lived in the big white house. The last time that crowd was together was at Jack Owen's wedding. Everybody went their separate ways. Bonus down to South Dade, Mike up to Canada. He was going to break up with that gorgeous little teenage wife that he had. And Theo and I, we lived in North Miami for a while. But I had to move out into this shack in what was going to be Little Haiti. Because really, I was going out to FIU. I met this girl. And Pat Tharp Gonzalez was a girl that described herself as more striking than pretty. She had kind of the Amelia Earhart look and desire for adventure in life. She was the second great love of my life. And she was very instrumental because she had a best friend whose name was Luisa. Luisa was a Venezuelan American, and she worked for a photographer in Miami by the name of George Schiavone. And we worked together for George for a while. I joined in because, man, this was glamour. He did most of the good print work, the exciting print work for Burdine's department store. And I wind up living at this mansion on the Miami River. He got to be a semi-celebrity in town by throwing huge parties on New Year's, and by being the place where all the local models, or people that wanted to model, were going to go. The house was rather magnificent, I thought. I had a bedroom the size of an efficiency apartment. Now, George was Mr. Charisma, but the crowd that surrounded him was pretty ordinary. Frank Quinn, the actor, was his pal. I was the gopher, of course. There's Howie the bookie. And the most important person really around besides George was this lady, Sharon Amberger. Sharon's on the set, and this is the gorgeous shooting area with a rose marble floor and 12-foot ceilings. What more could you ask for? So I would go down these steps to Burdine's every other day with the work. This is my first serious portrait. That's his son and his father. Things seemed to be great, but really, under the surface, I just had to keep working. One of the strange things about the 70s was people couldn't keep their clothes on. People would just want to strip off. That was... Now this is Mike. I did a family portrait. There's Gloria, his dad Barry, Tim, Danny, Mary Pat, her daughter, and Matthew. I put them all together in kind of a family portrait type deal. I still was very interested in street photography, and my street photography was getting really good because I was working in a darkroom, so my technical expertise shot up. I studied famous guys like Robert Frank and Gary Winogrand, and I was downtown all the time going to Burdine's as part of my work. What could I do in the streets of the city? I had to figure out what kind of lens to use. This is a telephoto. This is a 500 millimeter mirror lens. But you're too far away. You need to get close, like this. This is 35 millimeter. I also had to find a way to get through college. And I hit upon the idea of using my photography for my painting. If I had a good picture, if I had a really good picture, I could just blow it up. I could make these little pictures life-size, which is what I did. Some are larger than life. And I just projected on canvas. Get out, and I would print the thing with my hand, with a pencil. Now, at the studio, I started to do still lifes for George, stuff that he didn't want to do, stuff that he thought was boring. Also, one of the perks of being an assistant was you could test. Testing is having young models come over, you photograph them, you don't charge them any money. It's just for the photography. You're working on your book, they're working on their book. That's what you call your portfolio, your book. So I got pretty good. I was just using George's techniques. I did nothing on my own. You have a light, you have a girl, you have a background, you understand how to use a camera. How hard could it be? Well, it wasn't hard, and pretty soon I got a little bit of a reputation around town. The first model that I really photographed outside the studio was Laura Bernard. She used this picture on her composite. Laura was a big model in town. And she had this friend who came over to the studio and needed a composite, like a complete composite, which would be all my photography, which would look great if I had my name on it. So we went down to Key West. We did a whole series of photographs. And sure enough, the pictures were good. She was gorgeous. She was a little old to begin her career. She's like 25, 26 years old. There it is, Don Wegley. Now I should say that I was able to do this because of a technological innovation, the Polaroid. This is type 42 Polaroid, black and white film. You could get an instant photo in 15 seconds. And also, I got to be good because this young lady, this is Peggy Tuck. I was able to find somebody to photograph over an extended period of time. We dated for about a year, who was nearly perfect. She had a beautiful face. She had a beautiful figure. She needed to also get busy with her career. So she was getting old too. She was like 25 years old. And we had results. I started to get atmospheric pictures. This is like a David Hamilton picture. This is like a very kind of commercial picture. And this other picture, the next one, is like a Guy Bourdin picture. Guy Bourdin was like the biggest fashion photographer in the world. I got to meet Guy Bourdin. This is Guy Bourdin. I took this picture in 1977 at the Fontainebleau Hotel. Guy changed my whole attitude because his crew was like a step above George's. I realized I was going to have to leave George to get better. So it was an incredible coincidence. I walked into the office one afternoon. She says to George, well, why don't you let Donald do it? And George looks a little sheepish and goes, and walks out of the room. And so she looks at me and she says, well, George just got an offer to do a spread in a Tampa newspaper of some models on a cruise ship for their Sunday edition. And George doesn't want to do it. Do you want to do it? And I said, yeah, that's a great idea. I'll do that. I would love to do that. Yeah, so I did the shoot. But the thing was, freelance photographer Don Wegley didn't go over well at all. So I had to do something else. I had to leave the studio. And I wound up going with Dwayne Treeman and his family down to Trinidad. That's Kitty Bolt. It's his sister. I figured I'd get some good pictures and have a good vacation. But I wound up in Opa-locka in a warehouse by myself.